40 acres and a mule, reparations. You got your plot of land yet? You got your check yet? I haven't. Let's get right to it. Hello again, J Spot peeps, and welcome to the J Spot. Thank you once again for taking some of your valuable time to spend with me here in the J Spot. I'm your host, Mr. J. And a hearty shout out to all of you who have subscribed thus far. For those of you who haven't, please do. We'd like to get our subscriptions up to at least 500 before the end of the month or by the end of the month. Make sure you like and share, drop a comment, and hit that notification bell to receive notice of further content. Today we're going to talk about 40 acres and a mule and reparations. Not that I'm an historian, but I think it's something I should talk about today. There is a old southern saying that a wink is as good as a nod to a blind mule. And it's almost self-explanatory what it means. If the mule is blind, he wouldn't be able to tell whether you're winking at him or nodding at him. So it's just one is just as good as the other. He can't see the difference. Pardon the pun, see. And to some degree, that's how this country has operated when it comes to separating races. The races, in particular, blacks and whites, or African Americans and Caucasians. Case in point, during slavery, there was also another type of servant, an indentured servant, and not necessarily indentured, but they were servants, white folks, Caucasians. They wore different types of clothes, butler's clothes, and maids' uniforms. But they didn't fare much better financially or in their living conditions more than the slaves. But the way that the master would assist in the servants believing they were better than the slaves, when it came to punishment, they were both groups were subject to punishment. But the servants, they got to keep their clothes on, whereas the slaves, they had to disrobe. They had to get naked, at least waist down most of the time, 99% of the time, and then it's often, completely nude, depending upon the whim of the master. But that was a way to get the white servants to believe that, well, yeah, we may be getting beat, but at least we get to keep our clothes on, so we must be better than you. Again, a wink is as good as a nod to a blind mule. You're getting the same treatment, but because, this one little thing, you don't realize that you're treated just as poorly as the slaves. You're living just as poorly. Lyndon Baines Johnson went a little further than that. He said when he was president or when he was a senator, whenever, but it's his quote, if you can convince the poorest white man in this country that he's better than an N-word, then you can keep your hand in his pocket, take all his money, he'll never even notice. Because he thinks, well, at least I'm better off than him. And in most cases, he wasn't better off than a lot of blacks. He was worse. But again, a wink's as good as a nod to a blind mule. And it still exists in this country. People from India, where they have a caste system, People from other countries were there when they lived in those countries were at the bottom rung of society, but they come over here. At least we're better than a colored man. That's what they're thinking. At least we're better than you. At least we're better than you. And what is more apropos than what's going on with MAGA? People voting against their interest. People on Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, getting all this assistance from the government in their rural counties, in these rural towns, but hate black folks and Mexicans. At least we're better than you, when really you're not living any better. And now you're finding out that they're taking the blinders are coming off because you were a mule who didn't see that a wink was as good as a nod to you, because you were blinded by hate and the dislike of others who were not like you. And so we come to the 40 acre and the mule thing. What is more oppressive to a people, to make a person, another race of people think they're better than someone else, is the fact that they possess land. In that movie Superman, the first movie Superman movie, Gene Hackman is telling Otis and Miss Desbacher how important his father told him owning land was, and still is. When the Europeans came over here, what did they do? They grabbed land because they knew that's the wealth. That's true wealth, is real estate. Didn't have any laws then. They could take what they want, but as soon as they got what they wanted, then they started, organizing police forces and coming up with marshals with badges and sheriffs and all these laws that made it illegal for the Indians to take their land back. And then when it came to post-Reconstruction, the Civil War, post-Civil War, and blacks were promised 40 acres and a mule. Oh no, we can't have that, because then they'll start out with something and they'll believe that they're just as good as us if they have possessions, and it will give them independence. And we can't have that. We have to make them feel, we have to make ourselves feel that we're better than them, even though we're not faring off any better really. But at least as the poorest white man has a mule and an acre of land, he'll know that he's better than the black man, the colored man, who doesn't have anything at all. And the reason why that's so significant in the black community, I wrote a paper, an article about this several years ago, is because generally when you start out with nothing, you end up with nothing. There are occasions when blacks make it out of the ghetto. But if you're not a basketball player, football player, or baseball player, or a rapper, which there are plenty instances of that type of success, but when you think about the millions and millions of black people who've come through this country, that is a very, very small percentage of people. So for the most part, most of the people in the black community who start out with nothing, they have nothing to pass on to their children. I was sharing with Pistol the other night about how when I was growing up, when I was coming up in the South, we would prime tobacco in the summer. And during lunch, the farmer would take us to a general store. And most times he owned that general store. So we would go to the general store for lunch. We didn't have any money, so he would let us buy things on credit. So we'd buy our Vienna sausages and our potted meat and, crackers and, have a soda, grape soda, orange soda, and peanuts. And at the end of the day, when we got paid, which was probably $20 a day for 12 hours, he'd take $5 out of that. You wouldn't even get that. So what you thought you were getting, you didn't get. And that $5 made a difference. It didn't, really feel like it made a difference at the time when you were spending it during lunch because you were thirsty, you were hungry. Because chances are when you left home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you didn't eat a lot of times because you didn't have any food. So you were starving by the time 12 o'clock came. It was 100 degrees out there. But that $5 difference was a big thing. That impacted your budget. You could buy a couple of chickens with that. Bread and, lard or whatever, and flour to make biscuits and beans. Made a big difference. So again, you're at someone else's mercy. You're not independent as you think you are. You weren't as much as you thought you were. So that 40 acres and a mule, when they denied us that, it had a big impact on the on African Americans going forward, because like I said, you start out with nothing, you generally end up with nothing. And so I wrote a poem years ago, about 13 years ago, 40 Acres and a Mule, which I'm going to share with you all. If a mule I did possess, what could I with that mule do? Would I view that mule as pure largesse, so bestowed to me from you? If I owned a plot of land, a hardy 40-acre sprawl, would it make me somehow more a man? Would it make my stature tall? If I started life with something more than an empty wooden spoon, not a history of being poor, living in a dirt floor room. If I had not been denied my rights or the chance to plant or till, would I still today be in a fight to realize my dreams fulfilled? If I read the books of learned men, that's assuming I could read, would I not always be following and instead be one that leads? If I had that mule of pure largesse and the 40 acres too, then perhaps I'd not be writing this. Perhaps instead it would be you. Now, moving on to reparations. Let's talk about reparations for a minute. What are reparations? It's a payment for something that someone did that, supposedly repairs damage. Is there any way that the damage done by the United States to Black Americans can ever be repaired? Realistically speaking, is there anything that can be done to repair the damage that's been done to Black Americans? And the damage that continues to be done? Is there anything that can be done? Back in 2000, October 2000, I watched the Senate debate between Hillary Clinton and Rick Lazio. I was in a barbershop watching it. And they were running for the Senate in New York's United States Senate seat in New York. And Marsha Kramer from CBS was the moderator. And the entire time that they were debating, there was not one subject that they agreed upon. everything from soft money in politics to, you know, the treatment of the Israelites by the Palestinians and vice versa, Yasser Arafat. Nothing they agreed upon except one thing. When Marsha Kramer asked Hillary Clinton, what is your stance on reparations for African Americans? Since you supported those things for Israelites and Japanese Americans, what is it your stance about it for African Americans? That was the only thing they both agreed on that night. The only thing they agreed on that night was the answer they gave about reparations to blacks. But in any event, I'm going to share the audio with you so you can hear it. But the answer was they should just get over it. Forget about it. Let's focus on the future. Forget about it. Forget about it. And so I wrote a poem about that too. And it's called Tell Me Again. Tell me again why we should forget. I see that you haven't forgotten Pearl Harbor yet. Tell me again why you say you can't. 'Cause you paid everyone else for their time in the camps. Tell me again why we should ignore the many times you said, your mama's a whore. Tell me again why, because we failed to see the reasons you hung all our men from a tree. Tell me again why our history you choked for chaining us, killing us, and suppressing our vote. Tell me again why we should share your terror. Our enemy's long been who you see in the mirror. Tell me again why you wouldn't relent from calling our ancestors N-words and wench. Tell me again why, so we'll understand. And please, with a straight face, if you think you can. Tell me again why those little girls died. For once, tell the truth, not another white lie. Tell me again why, now that you live in fear, it's about time you felt what we felt all these years. Tell me again why, because we're not insane. And we know no one's cornered the market on pain. And tell me again why is it you find that when you cry your tears, they are wet just like mine? Tell me again why. We pray that you tell why when we made your heaven, you gave us pure hell. Tell me again why. What is your excuse? Why you won't compensate us for all your abuse? Tell me again why, because our ancestors need to hear that you're sorry for your hate and greed. Tell me again why. Why should we forgive the ones who detest the mere fact that we live? I'll tell you why, if I may be so bold. We have to forgive you to save our own souls. Thanks again, J-Spot peeps, for joining me here in the J-Spot. Make sure you subscribe, drop a comment, like and share, and hit that notification button to receive content going forward. And make sure that you know that you're not a blind mule and that you know the difference between a wink and a nod. Peace.
Mrs. Clinton, you were recently honored by the World Jewish Congress for your efforts to help Jewish victims of the Holocaust, many of whom worked in slave labor camps during World War II, and you helped them to get reparations from Switzerland, Germany, and many other countries. My question is, are you now willing to help African Americans whose ancestors were slaves here in the United States get reparations from our country for their years of slavery?
Well, Marcia, I was very honored to be one of the people mentioned and given an honor by the World Jewish Congress for the work that, although mine was a minor role, the work that led to the recovery of those assets. That was an important piece of history that had to be put to rest. And on issues of reparations with respect to African Americans, Native Americans, we have some mental and emotional and psychological reparations to pay first. We have to admit that we haven't always treated the people in our own country fairly. We have some issues that we have to address when it comes to racial justice right now. So I'm willing to work hard to be a strong advocate for civil rights and human rights here at home and around the world. I want to do everything I can to make sure that the programs and policies that have helped generations of African Americans have a better life in this country continue. I think we should be focused on the present and on the future. I was very moved when I visited Goree Island twice, first on my own with my daughter and then with my husband. And we do owe, as my husband said that day, an apology to African Americans for hundreds of years of slavery. But I think that the people I know and the people that I work with want us to stay focused on the future, keep our economy going, keep providing good public education, quality, affordable health care, do the things that will enable people to have the best futures for themselves.